from Gaming the Systems, and this is the top 10 greatest Genesis games of all time according to him. Now, I think when you're picking Genesis games, you have to pick from different categories. Like, for example, a beat-em-up would be Streets of Rage 2. Maybe some people would put Golden Axe in there. And then, obviously, you'd have to put an RPG in, like a Shining Force, maybe, or a Phantasy Star. If you're going for platformers, maybe Sonic 2, Shinobi 3. If you want all-out action, probably Gunstar Heroes, So let's see what's come up on this list, everybody, shall we?
According to fans of the Genesis and Mega Drive, number 10 is Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master. Shinobi games have always been highly regarded by fans, and one reason is how they convey the feeling of actually being a ninja.
Well, you know what, and I'm glad that he mentioned that, because I know Damo's going to debate this to the ends of the earth for me, but I feel like trying to be a ninja in like the sequel beforehand, Revenge of Shinobi, was a clumsy mess. Now, I know some people are going to disagree with me. Nostalgia's a hell of a drug, and I know some people do like Revenge of Shinobi, but that felt like a clunky, clumsy mess, right? Shinobi 3 here, okay, albeit is a lot easier, which is probably why I play it. It's just fantastic controls in gameplay, at least for its time, right? You can leap off the wall seamlessly, do double jumps. There's a big mixture of levels that offer a different variety, right? As well as some incredible bosses and some power-ups you could use. I just found this to be the ultimate retro ninja game myself. Again, it's probably because it's accessible for casuals, but okay.
No exception. You methodically walk through levels, handing out death to anyone that gets in the way. New to this game is the ability to dash by double tapping left or right, and you can also perform a downward kick. Having so many abilities makes for some solid gameplay.
Yeah, because you get to use the ninja stars, you get to use like martial arts, and you get to use your sword occasionally too. I mean, it's a variety of different things that you can do in the game. I just thought it was awesome.
What enhances the experience even more are the finely detailed graphics. Stage variety is a +2. One has you in a forest, another on a horse, another in a lab, another on a jet ski, and none of these stages are very long. They don't overstay their welcome.
Yeah, well, the whole game usually takes about 65 to 70 minutes to beat. And there's about 7 levels, but each level has like a different sequence and a lot of variety. Like, for example, level 6 has that big, like, valley level where you have to jump and go up the valley, if that makes sense, with the falling platforms and everything, and then it goes into like a building and a maze-like level and stuff. So yeah, each level has a different sections and a lot of variety, even within those 7 levels, if that makes sense.
Apparently,
it's a great game.
Worked hard to keep you from getting bored, and they pulled it off with this one.
And the music slaps too. I think did the guy that did Streets of Rage 2 do the music
Number
for this?
9
We'll have to check that out.
Is Shining Force 2.
Yeah, well, I wonder if that makes me wonder if they're also going to put a Phantasy Star game on this list. A lot of people love number 4, even though 2 and 3 were pretty good too. Been a long time since I played Shining Force. But, Shining Force was a great game. But I think it was certainly overshadowed by, I would argue, and I have argued in the past, by the Super Nintendo RPG library. Is Shining Force probably one of the best RPGs on Sega Genesis? Yes. Does it compete with something like a Chrono Trigger or like a Final Fantasy 6 or 5 on Super Nintendo? I might let you guys judge that one.
This is a tactical RPG where you go around recruiting allies, and then you take some of them into turn-based battles that take place on a grid. The previous Shining Force game on the Genesis was the same type of game, and it was also highly praised, but the vast majority of Genesis fans believe that Shining Force 2 takes everything that game did and does it better. There are now promotion trees. The AI of the enemies during battle has been greatly improved, but the most common thing I see people saying is that the game's world feels large.
I think it's probably like our attention spans and everything now too, but even though this game was actually absolutely fantastic at the time, I just don't have like the attention span for like JRPGs, like old school strategy and RPG games and text boxes anymore. It's just too slow and does my head in. Maybe I'm just always on the go and I kind of want things to constantly stimulate myself now. But I don't think I'm ever able to chill out to play a game of this like genre on the 16-bit system anymore. But if you're still into the stuff, let me know.
It's full of places to explore. You can find hidden items and hidden characters who can join your team. According to one of the game's programmers, they almost made the game too large. They had to compress the files quite a bit to get them to fit on the cartridge. And it ended up taking up 99% of the memory space on the cartridge.
I didn't know that.
In case you're wondering, here's how I came up with this list. I combed message boards, YouTube videos, and YouTube comment sections looking for people who made their own personal top 10 lists.
You know, that's spot on. And that's what I try to do as well. Like, I like go by my own personal flavor. I listen to other people in the community. You know, you also check out sort of like sales and things like that. And then you put them in a big pot. And then just by the law of averages and educated guessing, you put together a list, right? That's usually how I do it too. For example, like I did do a top 20 Super Nintendo list years ago. And I'll admit, in hindsight, I'd probably completely changed that because it was from a little lack of experience back then, right? But a lot of people like, you put Donkey Kong 2 in there. Donkey Kong Country 2 in there. Isn't that disingenuous? You hate that game. And it's like, well, I put games that I like on the list. And then games that other people in the community also like on the list. You know, I try to be fair without being too biased. And so, yeah, it's a good way to put a list together.
For the Genesis or Mega Drive, I ended up finding 184 of them. I then took all those lists and applied a point system to them. Games that people declared number 1 got 10 points. Games that people declared number 10 got 1 point, and so forth. I then combined all the results into the list you see in this video. Altogether, it took me about 10 hours to find the list.
Bro, I think, you know what? I think people would have just been happy if you researched for 30 minutes to an hour, did an educated guess and made I mean, kudos to you. But 10 hours researching a list before you even get started? Bro,
and tabulate the findings.
That's some dedication.
I'll add that my own opinion has no role in these rankings. My own personal top 10 list is a separate video on this channel.
Fair enough.
And since I like shoot 'em ups, the games I chose were way different from the ones on this list. I'll put a link to that video in the description.
I think you can mix the two.
Is Golden Axe. When the Genesis first came out, it was an arcade porting machine. In fact, Golden Axe appeared on the Genesis less than a year.
You know what, guys? I was wondering if Golden Axe was going to be on this. I think it's pretty obvious at the top, pretty close to the top of the list. We're going to get Streets of Rage 2, right? Streets of Rage 2 always dominates the top 3 of these lists. But I was wondering if they would put 2, I even said at the beginning, I was wondering if they would put 2 beat-em-ups on this list. I thought Golden Axe would probably be the other one, being that it's a nostalgic favorite. And it turns out that they have. And, you know what? It's just good casual fun, isn't it? I mean, I'm not going to argue that Golden Axe is like the best game, like from like a design point of view or a graphical point of view or anything like that. But it's just a fun pick up and play beat 'em up with a great soundtrack, great mounts, great enemies, and great atmosphere. And so it just does well with what it has in the early days of the Sega Genesis.
After premiering in the arcades, you select between a dwarf with lightning magic, a barbarian with volcano magic, and an Amazonian woman with fire magic. People enjoy the fighting mechanics, the large sprites, and the music.
Yeah. The FYY says, I always thought it was cool that they added a couple levels to the Genesis version since the arcade version was so short. I mean, that became a little bit of a pattern with some games, obviously, because imagine getting this game at Christmas and then beating it in only 10, 15 minutes. Although, even with the 2 extra levels, this game is barely half an hour, right? They did a few different tricks on this game. They added a couple extra levels, right? Or an extra level and a half. And then they also had the endgame credits. Did you notice that the endgame credits for Golden Axe on Sega Genesis were almost an hour long? I think I always joke that the credits for Golden Axe are just as long as the game itself. Probably to give players the illusion that it actually went for longer.
Which fits the setting perfectly. When you get close to a boss, the way the current music fades into the boss music just feels nice on the ears. Golden Axe is a simple pick up and play, no tutorial needed, beat 'em up. And the best thing about it is that you can play it cooperatively with a friend. Number 7 is Sonic the Hedgehog, which some now refer to as Sonic 1.
I think it's fair that a Sonic game is on this list, right? I'm actually really surprised that they didn't put, like, Sonic 2, 3, or Sonic and Knuckles in here instead. A lot of people do say that the gameplay was improved with subsequent Sonic releases, right? I always preferred the first one itself, probably because the first one's the only one I'm okay at. I guess, I don't know. What do you think? Well, what Sonic game would you put on the list? I'm glad a Sonic game is on the list regardless. You can't not have a Sonic game on a top 10 list, in my opinion.
To avoid confusion, I can't think of any other game that was preordained for greatness like this one was. Sega wanted to create a character that rivaled the popularity of Mario, so they put a massive effort into developing such a character, and a massive effort into putting that character into a game that would rival the Mario games. At one point, this project was even called Defeat Mario. The final result was a game that didn't quite defeat Mario, but it did ignite one of the biggest rivalries in the history of console gaming, not only between Nintendo and Sega, but also between kids on recess.
I tell you what, I just loved how rebellious, like, Sega was in general, hey? Like, because I remember at the time, like, I guess the Nintendo of America was, like, super conservative, especially when the Super Nintendo came out. Oh, no, we can't give those games to the children, you know what I mean? And then rebellious Sega was like, Sega does what Nintendo don't. And they kind of lived to that moniker for a while. I always thought that was pretty cool.
Arguing over which console was the best, the Genesis or the Super Nintendo. For those who played Sonic at launch, it was likely the first time they saw a platforming game that moved so fast, and the first time they ever ran around a loop, and the first time they ever heard the Sega vocal at the startup screen.
Yeah, can someone tell me as well what blast processing is? I always believed as a kid, blast processing was like a real thing, and apparently it's a total con. Can someone actually give me a detailed description of what blast processing actually is? Or is it just clever marketing for kids?
Sega! It was like their Genesis system had been upgraded. Of course, the game looked gorgeous and was just fun to play, and it still holds up when you play it today. Number 6 is Castlevania Bloodlines. Genesis fans absolutely love.
I mean, this is like the only Castlevania foray, right, on the Sega Genesis. And to tell you the truth, it's a pretty good effort. Like, Castlevania Bloodlines is a beautiful looking game, but it's not even anywhere near being one of my favorite Castlevania games to play. It's very good, but it's a frustrating mess at times. And, if we're talking platformers, there's probably at least a half dozen platformers I would put on the Sega Genesis top 10 list before Castlevania Bloodlines. So it's certainly a very good game. I highly disagree with this pick, though. I'd put this maybe on a top 25 list. But yeah, not top 10, no bueno, guys, no bueno.
The fact that they got a Castlevania game, and it was exclusive. Before then, the series had mainly been on Nintendo systems. It has all the things you would expect from the series, like zombies, bats, skeletons, fishmen, giant dudes in armor, ravens, Medusa, and Death himself. It may sound like more of the same, but in actuality, Bloodlines is quite different from the other Castlevania games. It has a more Genesis-like aesthetic. It's faster paced and is more experimental in terms of the color scheme and the lighting. And I could say this with every entry on today's list, but the music in Bloodlines is wonderful. It's almost reason enough to play the game.
I will admit that the music for Bloodlines is absolutely incredible, but you're not going to sell me in a top 10 game just because of the music, you know what I mean?
Number 5 is Phantasy Star 4, the end of the millennium.
That's really interesting. I wasn't sure that they were going to put two RPGs. Like I said, been a long time since I've played them. I'm not going to have a massive opinion on Shining Force or Phantasy Star 4. But again, like I said, if I was going to put two RPGs on a top 10 Sega Genesis list, those would be the two. They went with a bit of a different art style and gameplay style with Phantasy Star 3. And so that was a little bit more usually considered the black sheep. And then they had Phantasy Star 2, which came out pretty close to the launch of the Sega Genesis, if not at launch. So it really didn't have a revolutionary art style, although it was still a very, very good game. So, I mean, that would be the two for RPGs. Not that there was a whole pile of, like, choice on Sega Genesis. Like, Sega Genesis did have a lot of RPGs, but a lot of them were pretty mediocre. Although I did like some other ones.
Often say that the Super Nintendo had better RPGs than the Genesis, which may be true, but then again, it could also mean that people are unaware of how good some of the RPGs on the Genesis actually are. And Phantasy Star 4 is a good one. The story takes place across different planets and has a futuristic setting, which set it apart from most RPGs at the time. I personally have never played it other than to capture this video, but from what I've read, this game improves on the previous game in just about every department. The dungeons are better designed, making them less easy to get lost in. The graphics have also been improved. People also enjoy the characters, specifically the way they interact with each other through these comic book style windows, which I believe are the first of their kind in a Phantasy Star game.
Yeah, I love it too. Like, the art style's very anime looking. It's really appealing, isn't it?
Art within those windows is very well done, and the chatting doesn't go on forever like in other games. People also say that the combat has improved. Overall,
yeah, that's a good point. It's always good when, like, games get to the point with the story, right? You know, a few cutting-edge cutscenes and then boom, you're back into the game, right? You don't need to add fluff for the sake of, like, adding fluff. And it just seems like the people that made Phantasy Star 4 got it. Even back in like the early 90s, right, and respected the player's time when it came to storytelling, which is refreshing to see for that time period.
Phantasy Star 4 is a grand adventure that Super Nintendo fans should probably check out.
There you go. Check out Phantasy Star 4 if you haven't, guys. Put down freaking Chrono Trigger, play this one.
Number 4 is Cliffhanger.
Oh, are you kidding me? But please, you know what? I have a funny feeling he's going to be like, psych, I'm just kidding. Because this game sucks. This game absolutely sucks. I think the last time I tried this game, someone requested it for whatever Wednesday. And you know me, I'm quite partial to beat 'em ups. And I played it for about 2 seconds, lost about 3 lives, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done, pick something else. Dude, surely he's joking. He's going to be like, psych, I'm just kidding. No, he's not serious. Let's have a look.
Just kidding.
Ah, fucking A.
That's not number 4. Number 4 is actually Gunstar Heroes.
Yeah, well played.
Some people left Konami and formed a new company called Treasure, and Gunstar Heroes was one of the first games they developed. It obviously resembles Contra, which isn't a surprise, since 2 of its programmers previously did work on Contra 3 for the Super Nintendo. Gunstar has a rather unique weapon system. Before starting, you choose one of 4 weapon types. That choice will fill the first of 2 slots. As you play, the same 4 weapons appear as icons on the playfield, and you can pick one of those up to fill the second slot.
I'm so glad that this game is on the list. My dad bought this for me when I was a teenager, and this is like probably one of the best Sega Genesis games that people don't still appreciate today. And what I mean by that is, like, when you bring up Sega Genesis to people, is they always bring up games like, you know, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage 2, Sonic. You know, to casuals, Gunstar Heroes doesn't come up in the equation so much, and it's such a shame. Like, it's such a fantastic game with like sort of like an anime-like story. The weapons, you know, even with just like 4 basic weapons, mixing them together is a completely different experience every time you put them in a big pot and do different combinations. The bosses are epic, and actually when you play on higher difficulties, you get more forms and a fresh experience, like on multiple difficulties, which is really awesome, actually. And overall, it's just such a wonderful run and gun sort of like semi-platforming experience. I would argue that this could be not. I mean, obviously, you're not going to put this over Streets of Rage 2, but this should be almost on everyone's top 5 Sega Genesis list, I think. This is like one of the best games that not everyone knows, unfortunately. But Gunstar Heroes is fantastic.
You will then have a weapon that fuses the two base weapons together. Or if you don't want to use that, you could just toggle and use one of the two base weapons by
exactly,
themselves.
FYI,
People
sure.
enjoy Gunstar Heroes because of how action-intensive it is. It pretty much exemplifies the term blast processing. It also has that Genesis attitude to it.
Dude, I don't know how they got away with adding N. Bison to this game, right? There's also an enemy in this that looks like Jesse the Body Ventura from Predator. And then they also have like a Wish version of Shredder. So they obviously took a lot of inspiration from different things for this.
It's wacky boss encounters and cartoony look of all the little characters. But besides all that, this game is just fun to play. And that's why it's here at number 4.
There you go. It's a great pick. I think number 4 is quite fair. I think it's quite fair.
Number 3 is Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Wow. Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue that they put a second Sonic the Hedgehog game in the top 10 list. Personally, I'm not very good at Sonic 3. I can barely last 20 minutes before I tap out. I know a lot of people, like, going from an unbiased point of view, really do like Sonic 3. I guess I'm a little bit disappointed that they put 2 Sonic games in the top 10 list, because the Sega Genesis does have a very big, elaborate library, and I think you could have put like a whole pile of different games of all styles in here. And so they got 2 RPGs. So it looks like they're going to have 2 beat-em-ups, because I'm pretty sure Streets of Rage is going to be in this. I'm not offended by this pick by any means. I just think I would have picked like 1 Sonic game, you know what I mean? Iceberg says, I love Sonic 3. I know a lot of you guys love Sonic 3.
Version. All the things I said about the first Sonic game apply here too. Fast speed, spectacular graphics, awesome music, but for this one, the stages are a lot more expansive and they're packed with a lot more secrets.
I know some people love like the whole secret maze-like thing. I just like going from like one side of a level to another, testing my reflexes and skill for the enemy and level design and everything like that. Once you go into like the secrets and like mazes and everything like that, you freaking lost me. I don't like to problem solve on my video games too much, because we're already problem solving in the big game of life, right? I also understand and respect a lot of you guys do like games like this, so it's all good.
Rewards you for exploring and looking around. There are 3D bonus stages that you can find by locating rings in the scenery. There's also some new power-ups, including a flame shield, which gives you a mid-air attack, a water shield, which keeps you from running out of air while underwater, and a lightning shield, which causes rings to come to you and gives you a double jump. And to top it off, the cartridge has a battery backup, so you can save your progress. It's an awesome game and a testament to a time when Sega was running on all cylinders.
Well, I tell you what, I got to give credit to Gaming the Systems here. You can hear the passion in his voice when he's talking about like Sonic 3, so you can tell he like really loves the game, right? So respect. He's not faking it. I don't think Mortal Kombat will be on. I think Mortal Kombat was a great port on Sega Genesis. I don't think it'll be here,
Up
though.
until this point, the games on this list have been very close together in terms of the points that I tabulated. The games in the top 2 spots, however, ended up way above the other games on this list. But before I get into those, I want to show you some honorable mentions. These are ones that just barely missed making the list. I'm going to show you a lot of mentions, but I'm going to go through them rather quickly here. And these are in no particular order. Outrun.
I disagree with this pick, not because Outrun's not fantastic, but if you've played the Outrun on the arcade, you know, the original Outrun with its awesome frame rate and everything, downgrading to the Sega Genesis version Outrun, which is like missing sort of like some instruments with the soundtrack as well as some sound effects of the cars itself. I actually don't think the Outrun port in Sega Genesis is really that good at all, to be honest. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with this one. I think it's a bit flat.
Comics Zone.
I know people really, really like Comic Zone. It's got a great art style, a very unique, fresh gameplay approach with platforming, beat 'em up, and actually being inside a comic and everything. I found this one personally myself too difficult to enjoy. I'll let you guys be the judge in the chat.
Rocket Knight Adventures.
You know what? I wouldn't put Rocket Knight Adventures in the top 10. I think despite being a difficult game, I think it's a wonderful platformer, though, with really interesting, fresh mechanics. I would argue that it deserves a top 20 place. I think that's a fair, honourable mention, even if I'm not great at the game myself.
The Revenge of Shinobi.
Again, not my thing, but I know people like Revenge of Shinobi, even if I feel like it's clunky.
The first one.
First Shining Force? Probably not.
Disney's Aladdin.
Yeah, I'm glad he picked this, and I know I'm being a little bit biased, but when I talk about my favourite platformers on Sega Genesis, I'm talking about Shinobi 3, maybe like a Sonic 1 or 2, Aladdin. You know, I mean, I'm glad this made the special mentions. You could argue maybe not a top 10, top 20 game, respect. I'm happy it was mentioned. Yeah.
Ghouls and Ghosts.
This is an interesting pick. I always forget about this one. Maybe a little bit dated now and brutally difficult, but a good time. I have to use 150 save states every time I attempt to run of this. Actually, I think I played this for you, Daryl, didn't I, a couple weeks ago? And I got up to level 3 or 4 before I tapped out. But hey, I mean, if you're into really hard games and you're a masochist, I mean, this is a good game. Sure.
Lightning Force.
If you're into shmums, I know this is like a demo game.
Also known as Thunder Force 4. Contra Hardcore.
Well, you know what? I don't know about this one. Again, what do you think of... You know, I know there's a mod of this game that makes it a little bit more playable, but you shouldn't have to rely on a mod in order to make a game easy enough to enjoy, right? I found this more frustrating and fun. With that being said, I had the same problems with Super Contra on Super Nintendo, and a lot of people say that they love that game. So it could just come down to taste and skill level. This one didn't really do anything for me.
Streets of Rage, the first one.
I think, you know what, obviously the gameplay of Streets of Rage 1 is nowhere near as fluid as what Streets of Rage 2 is, but I think people go to sleep on the soundtrack. The clunky gameplay is not without its charm, but I would argue that the soundtrack of Streets of Rage 1 was pretty much just as good as the second one. And I think people go to sleep on how Sega Genesis was showcasing what this game could do at an early time in the life cycle, right? Level 5 is my favorite level in this game, and there's that like parallax scrolling effect where you've got the city scrolling in the background of like the yacht window as well as the boat going up and down. I just thought it was such a wonderful effect, and I thought Streets of Rage 1, even though it's dated now, did some wonderful things actually. I'm happy that this one got a special mention.
Known as Bare Knuckle in Japan. Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse.
This was a good early Sega Genesis game too. I think people sleep on Castle of Illusion a
then
little
we have
bit.
Sonic and Knuckles. For those who don't know, this is a standalone game, but you can connect it to the other 3 Sonic games. And if you happen to connect it to Sonic 3, it causes the 2 games to combine into a super game called Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Some people in their own top 10s only said Sonic and Knuckles, and others said Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That's a messy situation to deal with when you're trying to do a combined top 10 list like this one.
I think people know what you're talking about. I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, just you know, if someone's going to give you a hard time over that, don't listen to them. They're just a neckbeard.
There's people who said just Sonic and Knuckles may just like the base game, or they may like the fact that it could be connected to Sonic 3 for a bigger game. Either way, both Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 3 and Knuckles both scored high enough to be honorable mentions. If I had decided to combine those 2, then they would have landed at number 3 on this list, bumping the vanilla version of Sonic 3 down to number 4. Number 2 is Streets of Rage 2.
Oh, geez. Well, okay. So we all knew that Streets of Rage 2 was going to be either number 1 or 2, right? I have no idea what number 1 is going to be. I honestly thought in this particular list we were probably going to say Streets of Rage 2. Now, everyone's played Streets of Rage 2 to death. I don't need to go on about this game too much, right? But between the music, the flow of gameplay, the upgraded graphics, I love the big sprites in this. I also love that they added the health bars finally for the enemies. A big variety of levels. They don't outstay their welcome. Like, even if you play a non-hacked version of this game, you can beat the game in about 45 minutes, right? Just a wonderful experience. One of the most euphoric endgame songs ever. And just a joy to play alone or with friends. It's fantastic. I mean, this is pretty much in everyone's top 3, I think we can agree. And let's see what he's got to say.
Also known as Bare
Think Sonic
Knuckle
2 will be number 1?
in Japan. The first game was already an impressive beat-em-up that turned a lot of heads in the gaming community, but Streets of Rage 2 took everything that game had and turned it up to a 10. It featured big, beautiful sprites, spectacular movesets, 4 characters to play as, enormous enemy variety, a high number of enemies per screen, memorable locales, silky smooth animations, and vivid graphics in all areas of the screen. The music is peak Genesis, and it's so involving with the gameplay that some part of your brain might think that you're at a club dancing.
Well, I mean, the guy that... I keep forgetting the name of the guy that made this soundtrack, forgive me. You all mentioned it in the comments anyway. Apparently, they asked him to do a big nightclub tour because the music for this game was so popular, and he refused. But that just says a lot dude, imagine that, hey. I just... yeah, that's incredible to me. Yeah, Yuzu Koshiro, excuse me, thank you very much. I think he did a few other Sega games too, didn't he? But, again, you got these, 16-bit chit tunes, right? And then someone thinks they're good enough that you could actually go play them at a nightclub in the 90s. That's so amazing.
The bottom line is, Streets of Rage 2 is one of the greatest beat-em-ups of all time, and it needs to be considered for the Video Game Hall of Fame at some point.
He did the Sega Genesis version, a Sega CD version of Eye of the Beholder as well. I didn't know that. I used to always play Eye of the Beholder on PC. I grew up playing that game. I had no idea he did the Sega track. That's... okay. I forgot that was actually even on Sega CD. I know it was on Super Nintendo.
Number 1 is... Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah, well, you know what? Fair play. There was 3 Sonic games on this top 10 list. I personally probably wouldn't have put 3 Sonic games on a top 10 list, and the reason for that is it just would have been nice to showcase more of the library. But granted, I mean, Sonic's pretty god-tier platforming franchise, right? At least in the early days. Probably not the newer ones, but back then they were, so... I'm not offended that this was number 1, but I probably wouldn't have put 3 Sonic games in here, I'm just saying.
See that coming. As much as people loved the first Sonic game, many people agree that this sequel improved upon it in a number of ways. For one thing, it introduced the spin dash, where you sit still and charge yourself up, and then do a sudden burst of speed.
Yeah, the spin dash was just such a game changer, right? I also liked how in the beginning of the game, each, I guess you could say world or act or whatever, acts are the stages. So each world, let's just say each world, okay, each stage, whatever, only had 2 levels. And so nothing outstayed its welcome. You're always going between levels, doing boss fights, things like that. The only part of the game I didn't like was that Metropolis zone at the end. I'm slowly starting to get used to that now, but there's just so many cheap enemies in that, it just makes me want to tear my hair out.
Now you have a companion, Tails, who keeps you company and also allows a second player to join the action. There's also a 2-player split screen mode. I'm sure there's many people watching who used to play this game with a sibling or friend, and I have no doubt that you cherish those memories. So yeah, people have positive memories in association with this game.
And you know what, there's a multitude of different memories you have with Sonic 2 too. So my first ever memories of this game was my friends finally got a Sega Genesis in the summer of 92, 93. And so we'd go to their house for barbecues and stuff, and pretty much the whole day we weren't even playing the base game, right? We were just playing the multiplayer mode, doing races, collecting coins, things like that, and just doing hot seat, pass the controller around all day. That was amazing. I loved how it introduced the party mode to this, because up until that point, it was pretty fresh, right? And then maybe a couple years later, I finally got a Sega Genesis of my own, and that's when I properly got to dive into the base game and experience this finally in the other way. So, I have a multitude of different memories from this growing up.
People also consider the stage design in Sonic 2 to be an improvement. They take better advantage of Sonic's speed, and they introduce a lot more interactive elements. The Casino Night stage is particularly cherished because it puts you inside a giant pinball table. And somehow they were able to make all these stages brighter and more colorful than the ones in the original game. In the end, the Genesis was just blessed to have so many great games and to have so many great Sonic the Hedgehog games.
Yeah, all right. Well, I think we might leave it there. This video was from Gaming the Systems. I'm going to leave a link to the original video. It was pretty good. I mean, I don't agree with the whole list. Again, I would have liked to have had a little bit more variety in the top 10, just, you know, because there's so many different like games of all genres on the Sega Genesis, right? But it's hard to disagree that like Sonic should be in here, Gunstar Hero should be in here, Shinobi should be in here. These are all games I would have picked. Obviously, Streets of Rage 2. And he had pretty well thought out explanations for everything. So it's a really, really good video. We want to thank Nighthawk for the suggestion too. Thanks a lot, brother.